Hello, I'm David Sanborn, and welcome to As We Speak. On this episode, I talk with vocalist Cécile McLorin Salvant about her visual art, her storytelling, and her beautiful record, Melusine. This new recording is just extraordinary.
Oh, thank you.
It's so engaging. I think the gravitational pull of the way you ordered the music and how you paced it was really powerful. And then when I read the story, that Melusine, and how that was kind of the organizing principle for all of it, it made it even more astounding to me. And the fact that you drew songs from everywhere in your past, Baroque songs, even earlier than Baroque, like 12th century, 13th century stuff.
Yeah.
And that you kind of seamlessly integrated them into not only an oral whole, but you made it a part of a storyline, which is just brilliant. So there's so many different levels. One of the ways you described it was a reckoning. Like, what is my history? Where do I fit in? And how do I reconcile all these different influences, which are not necessarily related to strictly American cultural references, cultural context. And the French and Haitian is your cultural heritage. And
yes,
one of the things was funny to me is that you said your sense of humor is different in French than in English. Did that inform the way you proceeded about this record? Or
I think so, a little bit. I think, it's interesting as somebody who, I started with French at home. French is the language of the home. It's the language of my mom. It's maternal, really, for real, for me.
Yeah.
And it was like our home was this bubble of French, and school kind of eventually became that. But I learned English when I went to pre-K. I learned how to speak English outside of the home. So English became my language. It was mine. And it was mine to sort of correct my parents on their accent or their, incorrect grammatical choices. Or I had something that was different from them that I could kind of bring back to the home. I mean, obviously they speak English, my parents, but they speak with an accent. There's this slight disconnect, and I think it's a really specific experience to first generation, second generation immigrants. The thing of there's an accent in the home. There's something from somewhere else in the home. And when I go outside and I'm myself and I'm like this independent being, away from that, I can sort of explore and play with language in that way. And there's also this idea of being a translator, right? And of understanding, I think, and especially also it links sort of with the beginnings of my my performance life. The first contests I ever did were for French-speaking audiences who didn't really speak much English, or if they did speak English, they didn't understand necessarily all the subtleties of all the little, and the songs that I choose are always so lyric-based, so about the subtleties of language. And so there was this failure of communication, and I was failing every time I was singing. I kept failing and failing. I felt like I was bombing. And so that goes back to the humor thing. It's I'm saying these jokes in these songs. I picked these songs because of their humor and their jokes, and I keep bombing. And I got used to that. It
toughens you, doesn't it?
It toughened me. And it also shaped the way that I perform. I mean, the fact that I perform in such a theatrical way, such a melodramatic, sometimes, sometimes I'm a straight up clown and I'm really big with my emotions. It's because I was so used to having to describe things with the face and the hands and not the words and and also the notes. But, so I think going back to this thing of the language, I think my personality kind of changes depending on the language because of that childhood thing of French is for the home, it's for family. I'm a certain person with my family, just like everyone. We're a certain person with our families in our home, childhood homes. And then
Yeah.
when you go out into the world, you can become someone else. And so that was amplified by this linguistic thing.
Yeah. And it's funny you said bombing. When you would bomb over and over again, I think.
Bombing.
Yeah, right. Like there's no more instructive thing that can happen to you than getting your ass kicked.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what toughens you up. And you go on stage and, somebody in my case, somebody would call a tune and I wouldn't know it, but I would have to get through it. And you just, you see the looks on these people's faces, like nothing. You go, okay, I'm somehow missing things here,
Yes.
This once again, this record is just, it's such a journey. And I mean, there's so much drama in it. You were talking about, making things bigger than life in a way to illustrate it. And there's so much, I mean, these songs are about, love and passion and death and longing and just this, and there's such deep, human, it cuts to the core of who we are. And when you look at all these emotions through different cultural lenses, I think it changes the way you look at things. And, you not only see how different they are, but in very important ways, how much the same they are. It's a commonality. And I think that what makes me want to go down the rabbit hole and in your work is that along the way, you just see and feel all these different emotions, and you get these different messages, and how, in a way, ambivalent all of these feelings are, and how powerful and primal some of these things are. You talked about, I don't remember where I read this, but you talked about hearing and performing Jelly Roll Morton with the Murder Ballad.
Yeah.
And it was just that you said you were a little worried about it when you first went on stage to do it. And that because of the language is so raw.
The Jelly Roll Morton Murder Ballad I heard for the first time when I was 18, and I was in music school. I was studying, my only jazz teacher that I ever had was a man named Jean-François Bonnel, who's a clarinet player and saxophone player. His whole teaching method was he would bring a tote bag to class every week, every Wednesday, filled with CDs. He wouldn't say a word, wouldn't tell me what to do. He would just say, here, take this, bring it back next week. And I'd put everything in my computer, and all the Library of Congress recordings, Jelly Roll Morton, were on there. And I heard Murder Ballad, and I immediately was struck by it because it was a story. I mean, this was like a tall tale / true crime / like, it was juicy. It was like listening to an episode of, I don't know, Sopranos or something. It was like a show. And for me, I love shows. I love drama. I love a good storyline. This was the first time I'd heard that in the form of a blues.
I know you got my man. I know you got my man.
And all of this foul language, all of these, these words that I actually, my discovery of this music and of American music was coming from a place of thinking that this was a music that was very intellectual, very sophisticated, there could never be any kind of bad word, and no mention of sex. Like, as a kid, that's what I thought. I thought jazz was really this clean cocktails, date night, very, very above board, and then as I started really listening to it, I got all the punk qualities of it, and all the, the kids, because these were kids, these were like party people. And so hearing that language, hearing those words in that context, sung by a man, I was so struck by it. And I thought, I want to do this one day. but I don't know when and I don't know how. And pretty much 10 years later, I had this gig at Jazz at Lincoln Center, and it was Valentine's Day. And I thought, how funny would it be if I did this?
That's really funny. Valentine's Day. Even better,
Day.
just like
Yeah.
private home.
Yeah.
Shall cut your throat, drink your blood like wine.
And it was really fun and scary, and it got me hooked on this long form storytelling thing, which is why I think I wrote Ogress not very long after that.
Right.
Because I thought, oh, I want to be singing different characters, and I want to be telling this long form story over the course of an evening. This is so much fun. This is so, I don't know, it responds to something that I've always wanted. I mean, that's why I wanted to be a classical singer, because I wanted to be in character for the entire evening, for the entire performance. And so it opened up stuff like that. And then Melusine is kind of an extension of that, because again, I mean, although it's different songs from different eras, we're still slowly unfolding this story over the course of the album. And so I have to say, I kind of got hooked to, like, okay, how much time do I have? I want to tell one story. And I'll have a bunch of little stories within that, but I want an overarching story for that amount of time.
If you don't leave my man alone, they'll find you every decoration day.
You know, when I heard this record, I thought, okay, this is a logical progression, you know.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was almost exclusively in French, except for just portions of Melusine, was even more profound. You make everything very intimate. And I think that quality it permeates this whole record. There's a sense of intimacy, of like leaning in. I'm going to tell you a story here.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you a secret.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a secret. That's right. And with like the spilling of secrets.
Yes.
I think
Absolutely.
you said that. And of things being revealed. And you know, infused with that sense of it's totally riveting as a listener to hear that. And you know, I mean, I found myself always, when I listen to records as a musician, there's always that moment where I start breaking it down. Like, what did they do there? Well, how did they do? And there was very little of that on this record. I mean, I can say really little to none. And you know, some of my favorite musicians are on this. Sullivan Fortner, who's been your longtime collaborator.
Yes.
And it's interesting to me about what he does. He, you know, he's clearly, among other things, a great jazz musician. And he brings elements of jazz into this. And I've heard you do more clearly defined, what we would call jazz songs with him. Mm-hmm. But also, he goes all these different places with you.
Yeah.
And it's just, he brings, you know, there's a sophisticated hard jazz harmony stuff that he brings it, but he never breaks character of the song. In the effusive fan category, just the way you kind of transcend time and place and history, and you pull these things together into, this is music that is now. And the way I don't even want to say updated, because that's too small a word. You don't actually update it. You inhabit it, you know, with all the tools that you have at your disposal, being a trained classical musician and, you know, being gifted with this extraordinary instrument, your voice, and as well applying it through, you know, your work ethic is like, I have to take a nap when I read about everything you've done. You know,
thank you.
It's just,
thank you.
You work. I mean, we talked about this before about your visual art, the I don't know what you call them, tapestries, embroideries, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, when you say, well, downtime in the airport. And it's,
Yeah.
I'd rather do something creative than, read People magazine,
Yeah.
not that there's anything
Well,
wrong with
I'll
People.
read that too. I'll read
Yeah.
that too.
But it's all in service that you use everything and funnel it through your personality. It all comes out in your art. And I think that's
It's really sweet to say. I wish I wish I agreed. I try to do that. I'll say that I wish I was that person at the very least. That sounds nice.
well, I mean, sometimes when you're in the midst of it, you don't really see what it is that you're doing and what, because you're in it, you're living this
Yeah.
life. But
Yeah.
then, I think what makes an artist is that they express their experience of life and living that life through their art.
Yeah.
And it comes out, I look at your visual art and I see, I hope you forgive me with comparison stuff, but I see elements of, Nikki St. Phal, Miro, Matisse, even
I love those people.
Louise Bourgeois, all these, and this idea of floating, these things that are floating and, obviously West Indian and African influence as well. So these figures, it's kind of, it's like you're inventing an aesthetic. Like this record, it's not a jazz record, it's not a classical record, it's a Cécile McLorin Salvant record. Can I get into the album a little bit with you and just do
Please.
a play by play, blow by blow here?
I would love it.
And forgive me, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce these.
I can help.
Les Hommes Vivants. Those are the last two words in the song title, the first song, and that was Leo Ferré did the music.
Yeah, and the text is a poem by Louis Aragon. It's an extract of a very long poem by Louis Aragon about World War I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and just
Yeah.
There's a certain kind of mood in that text, and he set it to music. He actually, I think, became famous, or part of the reason he blew up is because he set these poems to music. And he also wrote beautiful lyrics himself, Léo Ferré. But his sort of collaboration with the Aragon texts are iconic.
Tout est affaire de décor, changer de lit, changer de corps. À quoi bon puisque c'est encore moi qui moi-même me trahis.
And the other song, the Charles Trenet song,
Yeah.
Les Routes Enchantées.
Yes.
That's kind of more hopeful. There's a
Yes.
kind of an uplift about it, where he's dealing with a certain period of time, and I think that in a way kind of differentiates himself from some of the other French, like the chanson, the what would you call it, the French cabaret. They're talking about pain and suffering and
Yes.
like disease,
Drugs.
yeah, and all this stuff.
Yes. He wrote that, I think, in the late 30s. It's from a movie that came out in 1938. So he probably wrote it in 37, let's just say. And I think that's really interesting because what a dark and weird time that was in France,
Yeah.
We're just like at the dawn of a new war after, all the wreckage of a war that was, it's just like in between two horrible wars, in between all of this chaos and destruction. And he writes this song that's just kind of a ray of light while everyone else is writing these songs that are so cynical. The French, part of what I love and hate about the French is that there is sort of a cynicism kind of baked into the culture, the way of talking. You can never be too earnest or sincere or optimistic, not for too long before you get kind of cut down. And I say this with love because this is my family is French, right? And I think a song like La Route Enchantée, or he wrote La Mer, which is
right,
somewhere
right.
beyond the sea,
Right.
and it's such a beautiful, sweet kind of optimistic song, but there's something a little sad about it too.
Longing. Once again,
there's a
longing.
Exactly.
Right.
And that one was written in 46. And Meg was written in 46. So I think, I mean, those two songs are so linked to war to me, which is something that we have such a, like today, and I'll say specifically for my generation, there is such a strange understanding of what war is, I think.
Yeah.
We don't really know what that is, and yet we're in it. But, parts of the world are in it, but it's very abstract. And I think about somebody like my grandma, who is, on my mom's side, she was born in 1926. So she lived through World War II, and she had, I think my mom told me that, like, she was in the south of France. She had Nazis move into her house and, like, occupy the first floor of the house and tell everyone to move downstairs. And, like, they had rations. And I mean, she lived through this crazy time, this scary time where, like, I mean, I don't know. It's just, so I don't know that the album does start with these songs that are completely imbued with a reaction to war, for sure.
Yeah. Whether hopeful or melancholy.
Exactly.
Demain, c'est le jour où l'on s'aime, et qui s'aime récolte l'amour. L'amour, c'est le plus beau poème. Pourquoi ne pas?
And the next tune on the record, Il m'a venu.
Il m'a venu, yes.
Okay. I was close, right?
You were close.
Il y avait un homme sur un rocher passé haut. L'homme a fait
Yeah, that was a song that was made famous by Mistinguett.
Yes.
Right?
Mistinguett, yes. She's like the French Fanny Bryce, kind of.
Right, the empress of the music halls, right? Isn't that what they called her?
Yes.
Yeah, and it was like this, that beautiful, like, that's very expressive, very storytelling, this, in a different way, but kind of in the same vein as Edith Piaf, and there's this kind of declarative, almost German, Sprechstimme kind of thing about that, where they sing and speak at the same time, and that's what I love so much about French music, like Edith Piaf. There are these songs of it reaches right into and pulls your heart out of your chest, because there's this sense of longing, like, and even in a more, I don't know if you can call it sunny, but the way that Charles Trenet did with La Mer, it's like,
absolutely,
there's an over the rainbow quality to it, somewhere beyond, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, not here, not in Kansas,
not here,
but
not here.
Yeah, exactly. And getting back to the idea of war and going through war, and just that, needing that sense of hope, because I know my mother-in-law, Alice's mom, she was born in the 30s, and so that, her childhood was affected. People lived through the occupation and battles, and it's different. Like, if you're an American, we never really experienced that. Only secondarily. I mean, millions of Americans were killed, but it wasn't that. It wasn't. You weren't in it.
It wasn't here. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't here, and that makes a big difference.
I think so.
Doo-doo is it doo-doo? I'll just say doo-doo. Doo-doo.
Yeah.
That's an original.
Yes, it is.
That's an original song of yours. And I had some notes about this, but I'm gone. I'm confident. Can you
Well, I
talk a
can
little
say
bit
that
about doo-doo?
yeah, I wrote it actually for a gig with Wynton Marsalis in like 2016 or something. I wrote it a long time ago. He wanted to invite me as a guest for a gig that he was doing in Marciac. He wanted to do a sort of New Orleans meets Haiti concert because of, you know, the obvious links between those two places and the music, and how there was this sort of back and forth of influence between Haitian music and music from New Orleans. And so I wrote that song for that gig. And it was sort of the first song that I wrote with just thinking about Haiti, really thinking about Haiti, and thinking about these sounds that I'd hear in my dad's car when he'd drop me off to school in the morning, on the radio, and, you know, all of this culture that I had sort of not been really thinking about or dealing with, because I was just listening to and making, you know, music that was American music, and digging into the history of American music. And so I thought, what would that sound like if I made a song that sort of sounds like what I could hear in my dad's car, or what I could hear waiting in the waiting room at the dentist's office, who was Haitian and always had Haitian music on, you know?
Yeah.
And we played it, and then it sort of made sense to fit it in with this album because of the storyline. There's this idea of like, close your eyes, you know, and I know you'll leave. Don't look at me. I'm hideous. But also, you know, support me. It's a song that goes through all the different phases, I think, of a relationship, where there's also this inevitability, of I know you'll leave, but I'll sing for you when you're gone. And it's a song that kind of made sense in that moment of the story, where she tells him that, you know, this is Melusine tells her fiance Raymond, they're in the woods, and she says, I'll marry you, but you're never allowed to see me on any Saturday ever.
This storyline, which I want to, backtrack a minute about Melusine, which this is an actual kind of part of mythology, of French mythology.
Yes.
As well, there's a correlative with West African and West Indian music as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's kind of the idea of this mythical creature in a way, like what's it, Chimera? That's
Chimera?
another...
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So there's very much this that runs through a lot of different cultures. The idea of transformation and transfiguration and all of that.
Yes.
That runs through a lot of different cultural mythologies from a lot of different areas, European and West Indian.
The half woman, half snake, you know, that's such a strong image. That's such a beautiful and scary image. I mean, and she's also linked to the siren, which is also this beautiful and scary kind of seductress / monster / goddess. And also the link of the woman to the snake, which is biblical, you know, this woman who talks to snakes, who understands them, and who, you know, wreaks havoc with the snake. I don't know why. Why do we do it? You know, why are we so attached to this image of this woman and the snake and her being half snake? Like, it's very interesting to me because it shows up. I mean, it shows up in so many different cultures all around the world. It's such a strong. There's something so strong about it for us, you know. It's
like attraction and fear. It's like why do we go? Why do we enjoy scary movies?
Yeah,
because we want to get the shit scared out of us, and we want to. There's something seductive about it, almost erotic about it, because it touches those same places, and this mythology, you know, before the internet, clearly, is you know, the way of storytelling.
Yes,
and I mean that's what that's what we do as musicians, whether we do it vocally or instrumentally. We tell stories. I mean, and that's a human endeavor. That's what we do. We tell stories, and we take people to places that they either experience something they've never experienced before, or experiencing something familiar in a new way. The song Aida, it's just you. So you're playing keyboards and you're doing all the voices.
Yes.
And that was a very short piece too.
Yes. Super short. I mean, kind of interludes. They're sort of like little explorations, because it's something that I want to do more of. I realized that there is another type of music that I make that has that only exists in my home and only exists when I'm recording everything and when I'm alone and no one is around me. Another kind of music comes out. As soon as I go into the studio, something else happens. I mean, and so I thought it was interesting to have, especially with the record that talks about being in your room alone. You know, a lot of Melusine is about this. Is this woman who has her Saturdays, it's hers. She's in her room alone. She turns into her snake self, her freakish snake self. And so I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have a couple interludes where I am doing that, where I am completely alone. There's nothing performative about this. It's really like a sketch that I would do in my diary. And then initially I wasn't even going to put it on the record. And I thought, no, but this is exactly what this is about. This is about this sacred sort of solitude that we all can find ourselves in. And if we're able to get over the obstacle of that loneliness, that initial loneliness and that initial boredom of being alone in a room by yourself, then really interesting things can come out, you know?
Moving on to Melusine. Now, am I wrong? Is there a guitar on that, or is that keyboard?
That's a layer of lute and theorbo. That is my lute teacher. His name is Daniel Swenberg.
Okay. And
he taught me lute right before the pandemic, and then I fell off. I stopped playing it entirely. Yeah. And then I thought, well, if I can't play the lute, I can at least have him play with me on a track on the album. So that's him.
I have fallen deep in love with you. True you are.
Did Ogress come before
yes.
this record? So Ogress, do you think it was any kind of precedent for setting this record up?
Probably. I mean, Ogress came before Ghost Song too.
Yeah, okay.
Ogress was something that I wrote in 2017, 2018. So a while ago. And it was sort of a way to start thinking about these mythological women, these monster women, these monster goddess women. And I had collected, I mean, I had a little collection of these figures for years. I mean, for 10 years, I've had these collections of chimeras, or I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that word, but of these women that are half woman, half you name the animal, and all of these mythological creatures and these monsters, these monstresses, you know.
Yeah.
And so I've always wanted to play with them in some way and to do something around them, and it just took a long time. It's just taking a long time. But I'm addicted to it a little bit now, so I don't know if there's going to be a next version, a next, you know, what the next monster will be. What I love about the story too, though, is that, and this is something that I've been noticing more and more, and I don't know if it's like reading too much Carl Jung or something, but it's the idea that the characters in the stories are not separate characters that represent, I mean, they can be, and I do think of it this way, that it's, and something that talks about gender and women and marriage and relationships between people. But there is another kind of reading of the story, which is, what are the dynamics of these characters within yourself, right? Who is the monstrous snake creature that hides in yourself? And who is this curious voyeur in yourself that wants to bring it to light? And why are we hiding this snake creature within ourselves, And what happens when we do reveal it? This transformation into a dragon flying out the window, this freedom, right? This beautiful freedom.
Yeah, it's freedom, exactly.
Yeah.
And getting in touch with some primal element in your own personality. And maybe it's an effort to kind of reintegrate a lot of these, characteristics that we have, this kind of sense of ambivalence, yin yang, all of that. And the idea of original sin being cast out of the garden and all this, where do these creation myths come from? And, the idea that, did ancient people have an insight into, what the nature of human beings is really? And it's why we keep telling these stories over and over again, different versions of in many ways, the same story.
Yes.
Because it's like, well, what if we looked at it this way? What if we cast this character, how about if I, made them cowboys? Or how about if I made them, Romans or Greeks or, whatever it was. And it's just trying to understand why we are. Not only just who we are, but why we are. What is our, what is our function? What is our purpose? And that's an endless meditation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the initial things that captured my attention with this story is that it deals so much with perception, with what it means like to be seen, and this contradiction that I feel that I have in huge part because, I think as a woman, it's a contradiction that's sort of baked in, which is, I want to be invisible. I want to be taken seriously. I don't want to be looked at. And I want to be desired. I want to be looked at. I want to be, am I beautiful? Do you think I'm, and this, it's like holding these two completely contradictory ideas at the same time. But I think it's also something that goes beyond just the female experience or the woman's experience. And it speaks also to the experience of being a performer, for instance. I'm sure that this is something that you deal with too.
Oh my God.
I want everybody to love me and to see me and everyone to that. And also, no, don't look at me.
Don't look at, no. God, that
look
intense,
at me,
intense ambivalence. I mean,
so
I'm
intense.
Incredibly self-conscious and incredibly shy.
Me
and
too.
The last thing I want to do is get up in front of people and be judged.
Me too.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, there's this need to express whatever this inner feeling is and to tell the story of like, I have something to say to you. I have something to say, and it's important to me. And maybe you'll find it important to you. Maybe it'll reveal something about you as a human being. And in the course of that, maybe you'll like me a little better.
You know what I mean? And it goes back
it's
to
like,
that, of course.
But we have to entertain all these seemingly contradictory aspects of our personality and our being in order to exist as humans. That uncomfortability is part of the game. I mean, sometimes what I always tell myself right before I walk on stage is like, well, it's too late now.
Yes.
Well, listen, I so much appreciate your time. And
I love talking with you.
I love talking with you. It's just, I feel like so inspired, to go exploring, and
oh,
please,
me too.
please, I'm so looking forward to whatever it is that you do next. And I'm dying to see Ogress. And I hope to see
It'll happen.
I know
It'll
it will.
happen soon.
Tête chargée que li te fem, li ta jiske mwen gen pitié, men pou mwen el pa fe sens, depuis l kampe sou position.
This has been As We Speak, a podcast from WBGO Studios. This episode was produced by Trevor Smith. Billy Robinson is our executive producer, and the president and CEO of WBGO is Stephen A. Williams. I'm David Sanborn.